How you doing, Saquon Jones with the Boxing Voice? Let me just get you.
Saquon Jones
with the Boxing Voice. How you feeling today, man?
I'm all right. How are you?
You know, I have to say that you have literally raised me in the boxing community.
Well,
I don't think that many people can actually say that. I have family members who are going to see this interview.
So I have a reflexive line to use for that, which is, "You're more to be pitied than blamed." But I am grateful for your acknowledgement that at some point in your life you might have listened to my voice. That's fine.
I have absolutely listened to it.
I've dined out on that,
Saturday.
and I appreciate it.
I'm sure you said that. I'm pretty sure you've heard this 1,000 times, but hopefully this 1,001st makes an impact because it's absolutely true. Speaking of your time at HBO, I want to just throw out a question. What do you think is bigger? It happened with George Foreman winning the championship, or you don't know ish about boxing with Floyd Mayweather and Larry Merchant? What do you think has been a bigger moment in boxing?
I think recency is a big thing, and Larry's on-air confrontation with Floyd was more recent than it happened, and so I would have to say probably Larry's confrontation with Floyd had the larger immediate public impact, but people still remember it happened and talk about it after all of these years. And oh, by the way, when my autobiography is published sometime in the fall or early next year, the title of it is "It Happened."
Oh, okay.
So that phrase is going to be perpetuated in one way, but I can't compare the impact of it happened with what happened between Larry and Floyd, because Larry's line was, if I was 50 years younger, I could kick your ass, right?
Yeah.
It was no more than 10 hours between the moment he said that on an HBO pay-per-view on Saturday night and the moment that you could walk onto the Santa Monica Pier in Santa Monica, California, and buy a T-shirt that had a picture of Larry looking into the camera with a caption that says, "If I were 50 years younger, I could kick your ass." So I can't match that impact. Did you get that shirt, though?
Did you get the shirt, though? Did you buy the shirt? You didn't get it?
I didn't buy the shirt, but I know people who did. I've seen the shirt. I know that the shirt was available less than 12 hours after he said it.
I will say this. It Happened is almost the boxing equivalent of Stone Cold saying, "I just whipped your A," against Jake the Snake Roberts, and then him catapulting.
It Happened. So, you may know this. It Happened was the product of.
Was that off the cuff though?
It was off the cuff.
Okay.
It was entirely off the cuff.
Right.
And it was the product of a build-up. And it was the product of the fact that George, as you'll recall, was my expert commentator on HBO Boxing.
Yeah.
And during the period of time when we were getting ready for the Moorer fight, I covered several fights with him.
Yeah.
And several times, in quiet moments, at the crew meal before the fight, after the production meeting, in places where George and I were alone and away from other people, I would ask him, I would buttonhole him and say, "George, how are you going to beat Michael Moorer? What's the plan for beating Michael Moorer? He's a southpaw, he's a mover. Holyfield couldn't find him, and he has better feet than you do. What are you going to do to beat Michael Moorer?" And every time I asked George that question, he would look at me, fix me with his gaze, and say, "Jim, you watch. There will come a moment late in the fight when he will come and stand in front of me and let me knock him out." Always the same words. He will come and stand in front of me and let me knock him out. Now, I invite anybody to go to YouTube and go back and look and see if you can find a better description of what happened than that Moorer came and stood in front of him and let George knock him out.
Yeah, I watched that fight live on HBO in
Shocking,
Queens, New York.
Yeah.
And,
so
that was a...
When Moorer is on the canvas and that count is going toward 10.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my mind, composing as the blow-by-blow man, what is it I'm going to say about this? All I can think of is George telling me over and over, he's going to come stand in front of me and let me knock him out. So what comes out of my mouth is, "It happened. It happened." It's actually a statement from me to George.
Okay. I heard that's a good snippet.
And that's the genesis of it. Happened certainly not planned.
You
I was as shocked as anybody.
You should have put that in the book right there. You gave that out to the
Bingo.
world now. Have you seen anything like this in your experience?
This?
Yeah, this is.
Well,
I mean, you've been there when Tyson was doing like all types of things.
Everything I did, okay, virtually everything I did. So my last blow-by-blow assignment on HBO was December 8, 2018. Mm-hmm. We are now close to 6 years later, 5.5 years later, and we live in an entirely different world, and the single force that has most changed that world is social media. Mm-hmm. I don't have a social media presence. I don't consume it. So I'm not equipped to understand all of the motivations that exist behind that form of communication and its effect on large numbers of people. But I can say that I see enough about the effect and what the effect is to know that what we have seen in the build-up to this fight, what we see in Ryan Garcia's persona and his relation to the boxing public didn't exist before social media. Yeah. He is a product of social media. And he is both architecting his own life and career as a product of social media, and social media are architecting him because he's responding to what people say about him. Mm-hmm. So there are unpredictable elements in what Ryan does and says, which he acknowledged to me in our conversation today are part of the program. He's trying to keep people off balance. He's trying to keep his opponents off balance. He's trying to surprise people and shock people. In some ways, he's trying to surprise and shock himself. Mm-hmm. All of these are elements of the social media landscape and world that didn't exist when I was calling fights.
Well, to give you some additional credentials, I mean, you were social media for boxing, you know, when there was none. You know, we came to you, we came to Larry,
I mean, what I said mattered, what Merchant said mattered, what George said mattered.
The kingmakers.
Now all of us matter less because the fighters are commenting on themselves in real time, all the time, via social media, especially Ryan Garcia.
What do you think of these fights taking place in Saudi Arabia?
That's where the money is.
Okay,
you know, I mean, it's one of the oldest realities known to man. It was a famous bank robber. Larry used to refer to this all the time. It was a famous bank robber who had been asked at one point, why do you rob banks? And he said, that's where the money is. People go to fight in Saudi Arabia because that's where the money is. And it has nothing to do with the general audience, something to do with the global pay-per-view audience, because...
Do you think it grows the sport, though? I don't know.
I think what?
Do you think those fights are growing the sport?
No, they're not growing the sport.
Yeah, I mean,
they're growing the bank accounts of the people who go to Saudi Arabia to fight there. They're not doing anything to grow the sport. No, because the prices that people have to pay for pay-per-view telecasts, that's not mass audience pricing.
Yeah.
That's selective audience, okay? So they're growing the isolated selective audience of people who will spend those amounts of money to buy it on pay-per-view, and they are not growing a general audience base for boxing.
All right, last question though, Jim, okay? And I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's say that there was a Universal Boxing Commission and you were placed on the panel. Give me two other names or three or as many other names as you would want on that panel to make boxing what you think it should be. Who are those boxing minds who you would want on that panel?
Well, first of all, I'm never going to be on that panel.
Why not? What are you talking about?
You may notice that since December 8, 2018, the last time I called a fight for HBO, not a single organization has offered me a blow-by-blow position. And there's quite a number of people on social media and elsewhere who will cry out and say, why isn't Jim Lampley calling fights? Jim Lampley's a great blow-by-blow man, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's buying into that. None of the people who have the money and the access, et cetera, want me to be calling fights. For whatever reason, you can speculate all day as to what that is. So I'm the last person who would appear on a commission like that.
But wouldn't that be the reason
whatever
why you would
such
be on
commission is, it would be put together by the people who have money to stage fights.
Well, just indulge the audience. What other boxing minds would you want to be a part of to make decisions that would affect boxing for the better going forward? Maybe 1-2 names that you think that you can match wits with, that you feel that would make a good council
I think Bernard Hopkins understands the boxing audience.
Okay.
He's an old friend.
So it's you,
I think
Bernard.
George Foreman understands the boxing audience.
George Foreman.
He's an old friend.
Okay.
I'm talking about people who would rank and could count as statesmen in the sport. Oscar. I think Oscar's really interested in the long-term health and positive benefit of the sport.
Who would your referee be? From either Richard Steele to what is? Let's get it on. Oh man, he's escaping my mind.
Mills Lane.
Mills Lane, yeah, Mills Lane. You got Harvey Dock. Who's your referee that you're going to put on this council? What referee?
Joe Cortez was a very good referee.
I'm fair, but I'm firm.
I really liked Joe Cortez. So,
okay.
I mean, all the guys you've named are good,
okay.
But I would install Joe Cortez. He's a referee I admired.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate this opportunity. I can't express to you how huge this is for me because I've been a fight fan. I remember my first literal fight was Hagler versus Sugar Ray. It was about 50 people watching a 15-inch TV.
Okay, so who was the real winner?
I have to go at, well...
It's the number one, what I call it is the number one elevator fight. And what does that mean? More than any other fight, I get onto an elevator, somebody who's a boxing fan recognizes me, they want to ask a question that's on their mind and nags at their consciousness, and the question is, who was the real winner? Who should have gotten the decision in Hagler versus Leonard?
Yeah, well...
Right? More people ask that than any other.
I think there are two fights that I would be happy with either one winning in a draw. That one is Hagler-Hearns, and the other one was Haney and Lomachenko. So I'm all right with it being
You mean
ambiguous.
Hagler-Leonard?
Hagler-Hearns.
Hagler-Leonard.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Hagler-Leonard and
Haney
Lomachenko are the two fights of my life that I'm pretty okay with.
It's pretty interesting that you see that, because people ask me what's at stake Saturday night between Haney and Garcia, and I say, well, Haney has a credential which is a stepping stone toward being seen as number one pound for pound, and that credential is he has an official win over Vasily Lomachenko, and that's different from Garcia, who doesn't have a credential like that.
Yeah.
So that's a big positive step in the identity of Devin Haney, and it's part of what he's trying to preserve Saturday night.
Yeah. Do you want to give a prediction for the fight before I let you go?
No, I don't want to give a prediction. I predict that the crowd in Barclays will be less than the promoters are hoping for.
Oh, you know what? That gives me one last question. I'm sorry. One last question. If this place doesn't sell out, whose fault is that? Is it the promoter or the boxer?
It's not the boxer's fault.
Yeah, all right. So
this is business.
Yeah,
I mean, the business people are the people who ultimately, are responsible for making a match and putting the match where it is. So the business people behind the fight are the reason that the fight is in Brooklyn. Now, one of the things I've heard was that Canelo Alvarez, who is still, from a monetary standpoint, the straw who stirs the drink, didn't want a fight with market appeal to be on the West Coast within 2 weeks of his upcoming fight with Munguia.
Does he have that much control? Wow, do you think he has?
I don't know.
Say if he
only
wants
the people who put this fight together can tell you whether Canelo has that much control, and they're not going to say so. They aren't going to say, "Oh yeah, we put it in Brooklyn because we didn't want to offend Canelo." But he is the number one dollar for dollar fighter. Terrence Crawford is the number one pound for pound fighter. Terrence Crawford is not the number one dollar for dollar fighter.
Certainly
that's
true.
Canelo Alvarez.
Well, there haven't been a fight in Brooklyn. I really feel confident that this place is going to be packed. There hasn't been a fight in Brooklyn in probably about 3 years. So there you go. Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What up, YouTube family? Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us get to that 1 million subscribers. We're on the road to 1 million. And obviously, we have other great content on our Patreon channel. So since this video is over, head on over to our Patreon and check out all the exclusive content or right here on our YouTube members.